So what is the appetite for Brett Yormark in the Big 12 to add UConn, or even a basketball-only school like a Gonzaga? Well, pull up a chair, sit back, relax, and let's talk about it. What is up, college sports fans, Big 12 fans, fellow members of Mountaineer Nation? This is Couz, and welcome into another edition of Couz's Corner. Pull up that chair and let me serve you up another shot of top-shelf college football content. On tap in today's episode, we are talking about UConn potentially coming over to the Big 12 and even the potential for the addition of Gonzaga as a basketball-only member. Now, there's been a couple different articles out about this the last couple of days, one from Barry Trammell over at the Oklahoman and one from Dennis Dodd at CBS Sports. But first, I want to touch on a podcast I saw yesterday, a gentleman by the name of Aaron Torres. Go check out his podcast. He's on YouTube and I think all the other podcast platforms out there. But he's a UConn alum, has a nice sized channel, doing really well. Very, very good content, and he's really been all over this subject of UConn potentially coming to the Big 12. He was saying in his podcast yesterday, Monday, January 5th, that the Big 12 could be pivoting a little bit. Yes, they still want Colorado and Arizona, but they could be pivoting a little bit away from wanting Utah and Arizona State and maybe some other schools out west, and pivoting to look at getting UConn in the conference along with Gonzaga as a potential basketball-only member for a couple different reasons. One, Brett Yormark has been open about his desire to double down on the Big 12 as a top basketball league. He wants to strengthen that even more because he wants to separate basketball on the next TV media deal when they go back to the table in 2031. Another thing Mr. Torres mentioned, which is something I talked about briefly on my live stream last night with Numbskull News, is that these Power Five conferences would like to separate themselves not only in football from the NCAA, but there is actually a desire by many out there for the Power Five schools to host their own basketball tournament even outside the NCAA. And if that would happen, a move like this would be a home run move. And if maybe Brett Yormark is looking way down the line here, 5, 10, 15 years down the road, saying, hey, if we get all these basketball powerhouses in our conference to go along with the Kansases, the Baylors, the Texas Techs, the West Virginias, the Houstons, who's coming in, the Cincinnatis, who's got a good historical basketball program. If we can get the UConns, the Gonzagas, the Arizonas, then, we can make a lot of money from hosting a future basketball tournament, even if it doesn't involve the NCAA. The data shows that if they pull away from the NCAA and host their own tournament, they would make a lot more money with basketball than they do now. So that's a big piece of this. And of course, Brett Yormark has a passion for basketball. He also has a passion for New York City. He has connections in New York City, and he's trying to bring more of that market into the Big 12. So I'm sure adding UConn also goes as part of that strategy. But there appears to be, according to an article by Barry Trammell in the Oklahoman, which I'll link to in the description box. I'm not going to try to share it with you. Greg Flugard did that over on his channel earlier today. You can go check out his episode. But basically, the gist of it is this. There are some in the Big 12 who are not real excited, some presidents and ADs who are not real excited about adding schools like Gonzaga or UConn to the conference. Obviously, Gonzaga doesn't even have a football program, and they feel like bringing somebody in that doesn't play football just doesn't bring enough value. And then from the UConn's, from the perspective of bringing UConn in, there are some in the conference who don't believe UConn's football program is strong enough and that the school doesn't put enough emphasis on football to bring them in the league. And one Big 12 AD even made the comment that, hey, and I'm paraphrasing this, but hey, UConn subsidizes their athletic department. And all it would take is one school president to come into UConn and say, you know what, we're not doing this anymore. Cut that subsidy out. And what happens to UConn's athletic department, which could then impact the Big 12? That's something I hadn't thought about. That's something that folks like myself, and I'm sure there are others of you out there who may not have known that about UConn subsidizing their athletic department. I know I didn't. So that was new to me. And that is definitely something to consider if this is going to be a long-term move, which, it should be. And then you've got the question of the money. I mean, obviously, is this going to dilute the payout to the current Big 12 members? We all know about the pro rata agreement. And according to Barry Trammell, just like we've heard from Dennis Dodd in previous reports, Fox and ESPN have both agreed to pay a full share to any Power 5 school who enters the Big 12 conference. So if they get Colorado, Arizona, Arizona State, Utah, they would all get a full share of the revenue, which is about $31.7 million on this upcoming media deal, which I think begins in 2025. So that's not a biggie if they add Pac-12 schools. We know where the money's coming from. It's coming from Fox and ESPN. However, if they add UConn and or Gonzaga, that money may not be there from ESPN and Fox. They may not be willing to pay any more money than what they're already paying, which means it could have to come out of the pockets of the existing 12 members. And I just don't think a lot of these schools feel like they can afford to do that. I mean, they're already losing pace, or have lost pace, and will continue to lose pace with the Big Ten and SEC already. Now they're trying to stay ahead of, or at least even with the ACC and ahead of the Pac 12 in the pecking order as far as payouts to their teams, to their members. And if you have to cut into that by bringing in two members, one who doesn't play football at all, and the other one who brings very little value in their eyes from a football perspective, then I can understand why some of these presidents would be skeptical about adding UConn. Now, I've said multiple times on my show, I think UConn's a great addition to the league, especially for my favorite team, the West Virginia Mountaineers. It gets them another opponent within about 500 miles of their campus. I know 500 miles is not necessarily a hop, skip, and a jump, but it's a lot closer than Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, Waco, Lubbock, Provo, Utah. You know what I'm saying? A lot closer than those locations. So UConn would definitely give the Big 12 another school for West Virginia and even Cincinnati that would be closer, and it would get them closer to that New York market. I've talked about all that ad nauseum here on the channel. You can go check out my videos on it. I get all that. However, I totally understand not wanting to pay out of pocket to bring some of these teams in, and those are fair. Those are fair questions. And another article I'm going to link to, written by Dennis Dodd of CBS Sports, he talks about those questions as well that some of these people in the Big 12 share, the skepticism they share. But it also talks about there are some in the Big 12 who want to bring UConn in and think it's a good idea, especially basketball coaches in the Big 12. Some understand Brett Yormark's vision here, and I think want to help him achieve it. But there are some who are really skeptical because of the financial piece. But there is, Dennis's article points out, there is more momentum to add UConn than there is to add Gonzaga. We've heard Greg Pflugar talk on his show multiple times about how talks between Gonzaga and the Big 12 have cooled over the last few weeks. That would explain why. It's probably coming from the Big 12 side because there's probably not a lot of momentum, not a lot of desire from some of these Big 12 presidents to bring Gonzaga into the league because they just don't feel they bring the value because they know that football drives the bus when it comes to revenue. Now, basketball may help do that 5, 6, 7 years down the road, but they probably don't want to sacrifice the reduced payouts to themselves, basically, by having to basically subsidize Gonzaga coming into the league. Now, UConn, I think they do see some value because they do at least have a football program. But there again, if they can't get the pro rata money from ESPN and Fox, is it really worth bringing in? Because the buyout, and Dennis talks about this in the article, UConn's buyout to the Big East is about $30 million. A lot of money, especially for UConn, whose athletic department is already in the red by $53 million, according to one of these articles. So they can't afford a $30 million buyout. Now, the Big 12 could help them with that buyout, but there again, where's the money come from? Do they give them a cut? Do they just take it out of the cut of their TV revenue? That can be done. It happened when West Virginia came into the league. That's one way to do it. So there's still probably a way to make this work because there again, UConn is only making about $3.8 million a year from their Big East revenue. And I'm sure they make a little bit from being in football, but not much. So if they go from making 3.8 million, even if they only go up to making 15 million a year, it's still a huge, huge bump in pay from what they're getting now in the Big East. And it might be worthwhile to make the jump if they can figure out a way to keep the current members of the conference whole. Let me know in the comment section, Couz Corner Family, what do you think about this? Would you like to see UConn become a member of the league or no? Do you think it's worth some of the current members maybe taking a little bit of cut in their revenue just for a few years for long-term stability down the road for this conference, especially if it can get them even more money from a basketball deal in 2031 when they get back to the negotiating table with the networks. I want to hear your thoughts on it. Also want to hear your thoughts on Gonzaga as a basketball only member and how you think that would work for the league. Also, guys, if you want to support me here on the channel, you can do it several different ways. First of all, if you want to support me financially, you can check out my merch store. There are photos below you can click to get you into the store. I have several different designs, several different products to choose from. You can also click the link in my description box if you prefer to do it that way. You can join my channel, become a member, take advantage of the perks that has to offer. You can hit the thanks heart option right below, which is a one-time donation, which will also allow you to leave a comment along with that donation, and that comment will get highlighted. And last but not least, you can support me absolutely free in 4 ways: the thumbs up button, leaving a comment, sharing it out with your family and friends, and last but not least, hit that subscribe button. Help me get to my next big goal of 10,000 subscribers. I'd like to do that by the end of the calendar year. So with that being said, I really appreciate you tuning into this video, tuning into this episode, and until the next one, Q Country Roads.
Take